And there was this commander, and there were all these spirits all around me, these spiritual soldiers. That was the download. This is what was coming into my awareness, that I'm part of a divine spiritual army. And this commander was giving us our jump mission to come to Earth. You can call the commander Christ or Krishna, Buddha, higher consciousness, source. It's all the same thing. And I was so pumped with all these spirits that I was with. I was like, we're going to Earth. Like, we were all so excited to take on this mission. And then the awareness of the Great Awakening came into my world. And again, before my experience, I'm an atheist, I'm a drug addict, I'm a homeless prostitute. Like, I don't know what any of these words are. I don't know what a chakra is. I don't know what the Great Awakening is. I'm going from zero awareness to infinite awareness, all in a split second.
I'm here today with Betty. Betty has had a traumatic experience. She had several traumatic experiences. Betty, you're kind of going through a dark night of the soul, would you say?
I'd say that there's multiple dark nights of the soul in a person's life. I've been through quite a few of them. Right now I'm feeling pretty much on the light side in this moment. Maybe in 1 hour I won't be, but right now I feel pretty good. Like I've overcome quite a few obstacles.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. It's up and down a lot of times, but you were going through an extreme point in your life where you were struggling with some things, and then you had an amazing experience that completely changed your life. Can you tell me what happened? How did this get started for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I will share a little bit about who I was before because that's kind of the cool part of the transformation. But I'll preface it with a trigger warning because my life is quite traumatizing before my experience. But I grew up in like this very chaotic, dysfunctional family. My whole family is a perpetual cycle of addiction and poverty and sexual trauma and all of the other traumas that go along with being part of a family like that. So I started to escape myself at a very young age because of what my outer circumstances were. So I would go into fantasy addiction or I would go into sugar addiction, just anything that I could use to cope. Right. So it started with food and it started with TV or reading or things like that. And then later in life, it started to manifest into illicit substances and eating disorders and boys and sex and whatever else I could use to get my hands on to not feel my feelings because I was under the impression that my feelings were too big to feel. I learned how to do all those things from watching my family members. My parents were both very active in drug addiction. And so I just took all these mental notes. I would watch them pop a pill or take a sip of something or smoke something, and their whole mood changed. And I was like, yeah, I want that too. I don't want to feel my mood the way that it is. I want to change it as well. And my parents' addiction really just brought them to their knees. I watched the progression of their dis-ease of addiction. And in 2007, my parents made a decision that they had to stop using drugs and they could no longer go on the way that they were. And they didn't know how to stop using. So they did what they watched other people in our family do. And so my parents thought that you had to die to stop using drugs. And so in 2007, my parents intentionally overdosed together. They committed suicide. And that death was obviously the most traumatizing thing that I ever could have conceived for myself. And I always knew that my mother was going to probably exit on her own because she had tried over a dozen times before. She was very unhappy with her life and she just did not know how to deal with life on life's terms. But I never in a million years would have thought that they would do that together. I never thought that my father would do that. And so when my parents died, my addiction became my parent. You know, my addiction was like, oh, well, we can't feel these feelings. I'll be your parent now. And so that was what happened. My addiction became my guiding star, my compass. It even branded me. I'm like covered in tattoos of liquor bottles and packs of cigarettes. This was my entire identity, had just become addiction. And not only was I a person who experienced a lot of trauma in my life, I became a traumatized person who maliciously, intentionally traumatized other people. I wanted everybody to hurt as badly as I hurt. And so I did mountains and mountains of harm to other people. I was not a good person. And in 2019, I ended up overdosing from drugs. Surprise, I took too many drugs. Not surprising. But in this overdose, I experienced divinity. I had some language for what happened today. I call it a near death like experience because nobody actually pronounced me dead. So I don't have any proof that I died, but I certainly died. A version of me died, or I physically died. And I had this spontaneous Kundalini awakening where, if you don't know what Kundalini energy is, that's okay. Neither did I. I didn't even know how to pronounce it for like 5 years. But basically, Kundalini roughly translates into life force. So in different cultures, we call it different things. In the Western world, we might call it receiving the Holy Spirit. That would be more appropriate language. But in Eastern philosophy, they call it the Kundalini energy, the life force energy. It's represented by a coiled serpent at the base of your spine. And then as the serpent arises and straightens out, all of your energy centers, your chakra systems in your body open up, they activate. Mine became online all at once. And as my third eye and my crown opened, it was like my spirit shot out of my body and started to travel into the space of eternity. The first part of my experience was a life review. And like I shared, I had caused a lot of harm to other people. So my life review felt a lot like what I would imagine people to describe hell to feel like. So I was not only experiencing these things from my point of view as an abuser, but I was also experiencing it from the victim's point of view, the person that I abused. And it was, yeah, it was hellish. It was like my skin was being ripped off my body. That's what it felt like. And then I started to experience everything that could ever happen on earth all at the exact same moment. So I was experiencing things that I didn't even experience in my life, like childbirth. I'm not a person who's had a child. So, but I was experiencing that life experience. And then I was experiencing the death of a child. And that, it was like the bliss and the suffering, and it was everything happening all at once. And it was so much. And then I experienced my parents' suicide, not only from my perspective as a grieving daughter, but from their perspective. And the ocean of anguish that they were drowning in was, I mean, it was all encompassing. It felt like every cell in my body was made of spiky static and I was covered in concrete, and it really felt like I was drowning. And I thought, okay, this is it. I died, and this is what happens when you die. Now I'm stuck in this sadness and this suffering. This is the rest of my existence. And then I started to hear these masculine voices, and they were saying, "You are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe." And they kept repeating that over and over and over again. So I started to follow their voices. And one of the voices was the voice of my father. So I felt very safe following that voice because I trusted that voice. And so then I landed in the space of eternity. I landed in the light. And it felt like I had landed on the deck of a spaceship. And there was this commander, and there were all these spirits all around me, these spiritual soldiers. That was the download. This is what was coming into my awareness, that I'm part of a divine spiritual army. And this commander was giving us our jump mission to come to Earth. You can call the commander Christ or Krishna, Buddha, higher consciousness, source. It's all the same thing. And I was so pumped with all these spirits that I was with. I was like, we're going to Earth. Like, we were all so excited to take on this mission. And then the awareness of the Great Awakening came into my world. And again, before my experience, I'm an atheist, I'm a drug addict, I'm a homeless prostitute. Like, I don't know what any of these words are. I don't know what a chakra is. I don't know what the Great Awakening is. I'm going from zero awareness to infinite awareness, all in a split second. But I was trusting this experience. I felt like I was at home. I felt like it was truth. They told me that I'm part of a spiritual army that has come to liberate Earth. I don't know if Earth actually wants liberation, but that's what we signed up to do, to transcend and transmute and shift the level of conscious thinking from 3D thinking to 5D thinking, from ego-centered thought to spirit-centered thought, and that we were all here for it. And then my awareness shifted over to another scene, and I found myself in front of a table of beings. I didn't ask who they were because I knew that they were people in charge, at least in charge of me, if not everything. And they were thumbing through this big giant book and they said, "Oh, okay, it's nice to see you. You're not meant to stay. You're just here for information." And I'm like looking all around me. I'm like, "You guys aren't talking to me, are you?" Because I don't know where I am, but it feels groovy and I'm staying. And it kept insisting and flipping through the book. No, no, no. You're just here for information. So then they took me through the details of my pre-birth planning. They showed me that I, as a soul, had actually designed this crazy, chaotic life that I had just come from before coming to Earth. So in my awareness, it looked like I was in a video game, and it looked like I was in a grocery store. And there was a man, he had an empty grocery cart. He was leading me through the aisles. He said, "Okay, pick your life." And lining the walls of the grocery store aisles were these big, giant cereal boxes. Every cereal box had a life experience on it. And I knew that I was coming to Earth for the Great Awakening. I also had an awareness of the things that I had not transcended in past lives or parallel lives, because everything's happening simultaneously, all at the exact same moment. But for my linear mind to tell the story, I'll share that in other lifetimes, I had not completed certain lessons. And so I was coming back to complete some of those. And this awareness of the Great Awakening, taking on collective trauma. So I just start grabbing every single cereal box. Like, I don't care if I can't eat all of this cereal. I'm going to do it all while I'm on Earth. And I'm grabbing the most dense experiences: addiction, homelessness, poverty, prostitution, sexual trauma. There's also some boxes that I grab of things that I had not completed in life yet, like spiritual awakening, recovery, overcoming, being an author, being a teacher. But those things hadn't happened. So I was just thinking, "Oh, that's lovely cart filler," as I'm kind of going through this scene. And then the one moment that really sticks out for me that I always feel very called to share about is when I picked the cereal box of childhood sexual trauma. A little orb of light came out with the box, and that orb of light was the soul of the man that would molest me as a small child. And we came orb to orb with each other, and we came into contract to play these roles in each other's lives. And I saw the reasons why. One of the reasons was that in a past life, I had been his abuser in this capacity. And so in this life, we were balancing the energy for each other. And some of the other reasons, again, were past life completion, the Great Awakening, needing to transcend that experience for all the other souls in the collective who maybe didn't get a chance to do that. So as I heal from my own sexual trauma, I'm healing for every little girl who never got an opportunity to heal from theirs. And so with that awareness, right now, my victim mentality has been cracked off of me. It's been peeled away. I'm no longer a victim to my circumstance. I am a divine co-creator of my reality. I had a say in everything that's happened to me in my life. I picked the partners, they picked me, all of these different aspects. So I just feel like this, 2 tons of bondage has been released from me. I go back in front of the table of beings. I'm filled with gratitude. I'm crying out, "This is so wonderful. Thank you so much." I'm still not going back to Earth, but I am so happy to have this information. It is so cool to know that I'm a creator. And they just kept affirming, like, "You're going back. And you're not going back as a punishment. You're going back because you signed up for something, and this is what we do." And I transformed into a small child, kicking my metaphorical hands and feet on the ground because there's no body there. But I was like, "No way. You can't make me. I won't." I said, "You guys don't tell us what Earth is actually like, and I'm not going back. There's no way." And they're like, "Yeah, you said this before, like hundreds of thousands of times before. You always say the same thing." And so they said, "You don't have to go back into the body that you just came from, but you do have to go back. And so we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into." And this baby was going to have to complete my life experience card. So I had 2 options: go back into the body that had already gone through all of those really adverse traumas and that whole storyline of who I was, or start from zero. And I was like, "No way. There's no way that I can do it from zero. No, I'll go back into the body I just came from." And as I was sifting back into my awareness, the beings of light called out to me and they said, listen, the first part of your life was boot camp, and the second part of your life is going to be carrying out the mission. It's not going to be nearly as challenging as the first. You're going to have soulmates, kindred spirits, teachers, mentors, communities. They're all going to help you along your way. Trust us. And I was like, I do not trust you guys. And I found myself back in my body and my awareness.
That's amazing. I always find it so fascinating how people describe how, when they chose their life, it's often related to food and shopping or a buffet table or something like that. So many people describe it in that same way, and like how we take on all of this trauma and experiences. And sometimes we're told maybe that's a little bit too much. You should put some back. But ultimately, it really is up to us. And I love the way that you describe how your victimhood just cracked off of you and you became aware that you actually needed those experiences and you chose them. That is just mind blowing to me.
That's the ticket. That's the key to enjoying the earth experience. Breaking out of victim mentality has been my number one tool. And I'm not saying that I don't succumb to it. You know, if I miss the train and I feel like a victim, like, oh my God, I missed it by 1 second, poor me. But it's a daily thing to break myself out of that awareness. I have to constantly be vigilant and practice not succumbing to the victim mentality.
And so, did you remember all of this when you came back, or did it take some time?
Yeah, I remembered, but I just thought that I was hallucinating from all the drugs that I had just done. So I was like, damn, that I'll never be that high again. I was so high that I thought I was talking to God. That's crazy. And I just wrote it off as drug-induced psychosis for as long as I could until the universe, the signs, the synchronicities, the guidance, the voices from beyond, they were undeniable. And they kept telling me that I had to do recovery. I had to get on to the next part of my journey. I had to start breaking open those other cereal boxes. And I just didn't know how to do that. And so the universe made it so that I had no choice. Like all of these divine synchronicities started happening. Like I found myself on a train. I had no destination and there was nobody in the whole train car. I live in New York City. That's very odd to have nobody else on the train in a city full of 9 million people in the middle of the day. So I'm sitting on this train. I'm broken. I'm lost. I'm confused. I'm battered. And the doors open, and this man steps in, and he sits directly across from me, even though the whole train car was empty. And around his neck, he was wearing this big, blinged out necklace for a 12-step fellowship for people who are recovering from drug addiction. And so I heard this voice in my head, and it said, that's your path. Follow that man to a 12-step meeting. And so I asked the stranger on the train if he happened to be going to a meeting. And guess what? He was on his way to a meeting and he took me with him. And that was like a deep moment of surrender. I knew that I was being forced to do something that I did not want to do. I did not want to do recovery. I did not want to stop using drugs. That was my whole life. It was the only thing that I had ever really known. And I didn't want to have to start from zero, you know? And the next day, I went to another meeting because that's one of the suggestions is to keep making meetings. And I think it's to get you into a new habit. You know, now meetings become your habit instead of using drugs. And when I walked into this all women's meeting, I mean, I looked destroyed. I did not look the way that I look now when my spiritual awakening happened. When my spiritual awakening happened, I had these huge holes all over my face and my arms because I would pick my skin every time I would use substances. I thought that there was bugs living inside of me, and so I would try to get the bugs out of me. I was missing most of my teeth. Thank you, recovery and spiritual awakening, for letting me buy some teeth in my life. I was skinny. I was sunken in. I was dead in my eyes. There was no life in me. So I walk into this women's meeting and like they can tell that I'm new because I look messed up. And this woman grabs me as I walk in and she hugged me so tight. And she whispered in my ear and she said, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. The same message that I heard as I traveled into the light in heaven. And I melted into this woman and I cried and I rested my head on her big boobies for as long as she would let me. And this was like my deepest moment of surrender because I knew that God was guiding me, that something bigger was guiding me. So that's how I started to realize that my experience was a true one. And that's how I started to really stand in my spiritual truth.
How can you deny it at that point? That brings tears to my eyes. And still, for her to say the exact same words, just how can you deny that? And I just want to tell you, you look amazing. If I saw you on the street or I met you in the grocery store, I would never have guessed. You have made such an amazing recovery.
Thank you. It always blows me away because I get to be around a lot of people who have overcome major adversity in their life. And you just don't know what the story is that a person is holding inside of them. And so I try to keep that awareness with me all the time. I don't know what kind of trauma somebody's been through. Maybe somebody's being rude. Maybe they cut me off in traffic. Maybe they stepped on my toe. But like, I don't know what they've gone through. Maybe they've overcome the same kind of adversity that I have. And so, can I give them a little bit of grace for a second and maybe not be so quick to judge? It's definitely a work in progress, but thank you so much for the compliment. It blows me away too. Like, I look in the mirror, I'm like, who is that? That's crazy.
And so you had these amazing synchronicities. You're on the road to recovery. What happens for you next?
So I found myself in a long-term women's rehab, and I stayed there for a year and a half. And that's where I got this great foundation in recovery and spirituality because I was, again, an atheist before this experience. So I tried to figure out where I fit in this whole world of spirit. I didn't know that I had a near-death-like experience because I didn't know what those words were. And nobody in that rehab helped me figure that out. I didn't have access to the internet or a cell phone for a year and a half. So that's like its own accomplishment. I win the game of life. But I would get to go to the library once a week. And so I started reading all these books. I felt like a caveman. I was like, who reads books anymore? I started reading books and I picked up every sacred text. I wanted to find the common thread between all of these different faiths. And so I read the Bible, I read the Torah, I read the Quran, I got involved in the Baha'i faith. And then I started to go into esoteric teachings like the Rosicrucian teachings, and I found information about light workers and star seeds, and then I found A Course in Miracles. And if you don't know what A Course in Miracles is, it's a channeled text. It's a channeled message from Jesus, channeled through the mind of a militant atheist psychotherapist in Columbia University in the 1970s. And when I read A Course in Miracles, I thought that it was a handbook for the recently deceased. And I just really thought that I had died and that I was just doing all of these things to get back to heaven. Like I would make it to a recovery milestone. I'd be like, hey, God, I haven't used drugs in 7 days. Are you coming to get me? And I'd get no response. And then, like, okay, I made it to 3 months. Is anybody, where's my spaceship to beam me back up to heaven? Please come get me. Don't forget about me. And then I found A Course in Miracles and I thought, okay, I need to read this book. And if I read this book, I'll get back to heaven. And A Course in Miracles is like an 1,800-page manifesto. It's like this huge book. It's got a workbook inside of it. The workbook is a reprogramming. You do one lesson a day. I said, okay, if I could get through all the lessons and I can get through the text, then I definitely am going to shoot out of my body and go back to heaven. And I made it to the last paragraph, the last sentence. I took my shoes off. I laid back in bed. I lived in a bunk bed for a year and a half. I was in my bunk bed and I was like, this is it. I'm ready. Beam me up. And I got to the last word and nothing happened. But I had a lot more information. And A Course in Miracles is a spiritual text that I choose to live my life guided by. And that really helped me in my integration process. And then once I left treatment, I had developed all these amazing relationships with my spirit guides and my angels and my darkness and all these different aspects of myself. And I cried out to God and I said, I'm so happy that I have all of this non-physical help, but I still have to be a human. And so I'm going to need physical help too. Can you have my spirit guides manifest into physical people so that I don't feel so alone on this journey? And that's when I found all my spiritual communities. I found my home, my spiritual home inside of these spaces with these other people. And it wasn't every community that I went to. You know, I tried on lots of different communities, and some of them I was like, okay, this is a cult. Okay, this person's crazy. Okay, this, that, whatever my judgments were. But I found my people. I found the people that felt like my home, my soul family, my hive, my tribe. And it was a total game changer for me. And so I stay very immersed in community today.
You said that you came here to help with the Great Awakening. What is the Great Awakening and what are you doing to help?
So, the Great Awakening, this was my download. The Great Awakening is a collective shift in consciousness. We're transcending from a level of third dimensional thought to fifth dimensional thought. And I'm here to do that by just being myself. I don't have to teach or preach or proselytize. I mean, I love sharing my story when I can. I love holding space for other experiencers to share their stories. I host a podcast for the International Association for Near Death Studies, and I love being able just to create that conscious space. But I don't have to do anything to assist the collective in the Great Awakening. All I have to do is be mindful of my own internal healing journey. It's not about forcing other people to heal or to believe the things that I believe. Just gotta be me. That's it. Just shine my light. What, like when our light shines, we affect people without even knowing it. They don't have to hear my story. I could sit next to somebody on the subway and maybe they get off the subway in a better mood because they sat next to my light, because I live in the awareness that I am light. And so yeah, that's how I understand the Great Awakening. But there are three different waves of volunteers who came here to assist with the Great Awakening. I'm a second wave volunteer. And so for second wave volunteers, it is just about being yourself. And those are going to be people that are between the ages of probably like mid 30s to mid 50s right now, as we're recording this in 2024. So those are generally second wave volunteers. The people who were here for like the 60s, like the psychedelic revolution, those are first wave volunteers. They had a much more active role in the Great Awakening. They were really here to put in place new thought systems. And so the second wave volunteers are kind of running off of that. The third wave volunteers, those are going to be like our indigo children and people that are much younger, and they're coming into form completely awake and aware. And so they have a different job, and that's to create new social constructs. And that's why you see all of these things dismantling right now in the collective, because the old thought systems and constructs do not work. And we're really starting to become aware of that because it's very violently being shoved in our face right now, because we're meant to overcome in the immediate future, like in the right now moment. So those are the different ways of volunteers and kind of what their purposes are on the path of the Great Awakening.
You said that you're here just to be yourself, and that's kind of what the second wave of volunteers is doing, is just being themselves. Is that, and I've heard it described kind of like this, where there's like a tuning fork and it's vibrating, and then it starts affecting like other tuning forks around it. Is that how it works, just by being yourself?
I think so. You know, a big part of me being me is being my most authentic self. I share without any fear, right? Because I'm under the impression that the world is an illusion. This is a dream, a collective dream that we're all having. So why wouldn't I be as honest as I possibly can? Because it's not real anyway. It doesn't matter. I mean, not to discount people's feelings of what is really happening to them, but I love the awareness that I live inside of a dream. So for me, being myself is being my most authentic self, living courageously, bravely, being truthful, being honest, being open-minded too. And, you know, like I said, everything happens in waves. So some days are better than others. I'm not saying that I'm some super enlightened individual and every day I'm super spiritual and I love everybody. There's lots of days that I can't stand everyone, but that's just one day, right? So, and that's still me being me. And this is me being me right now, being totally honest. Like, I don't think that I'm supposed to be perfect. I came here to be human. Humans are not perfect. We're flawed. We have these different personality profiles that ebb and flow and expand and contract. So I'm just here to embrace that and understand temperance, right? Like for the beginning of my spiritual journey, I just thought that I was supposed to get back to heaven. I thought that I had to do all of these really righteous things to get there. And today I understand that my divine self, my spirit wanted to come to earth and have a human experience. So I have to find that balance on being a human and being a spirit. I don't need to spend all day in spiritual awareness. I mean, I do spend a lot of my day in spiritual community, so I'm always kind of in elevated conversations, but I have very grounding experiences too. Like my partner, he's an atheist, so he grounds me in my human experience a lot because our life is about the human experience together. And then I get to experience my spiritual side with my communities and my soulmates and my friendship soulmates. And so, yeah, I think that me being me is, I think it's individual. It's not one size fits all for everybody. But so for me, I feel very called to be as authentic as possible.
Would you say that we are in the midst of the Great Awakening, where it started many years ago and we still have many years to go through?
I absolutely believe that we're in the midst of it. And I think that the awareness of the Great Awakening can be one more matrix trick, right? So, like, if you think of the game, if you think of the world like a game, like it's a video game, which I do, that the big boss, like the bad guy of the video game, is the game itself. So the big boss of this video game is the matrix grid that we live inside of. So its whole purpose is to distract us from our soul's purpose and from the present moment. So, like, when you think about all the things that are going on in the world, and you think about all the injustice and all the unrest and all the poverty and the starvation and all these crazy things that are happening, right? That's the game doing its thing. It's the whole point of the game is to keep us away from spirit. So if I can feel self-righteous and say, like, well, the universe is really a damning place because look at all these terrible things, then the game is winning. So I think that even the awareness of the Great Awakening, right? Oh, well, it's going to happen in this year at this time. Again, you're not in the present moment, right? Because you're expecting some sort of savior flash to happen in a certain time frame. So for me, the Great Awakening is happening. I had a Great Awakening. If I can have one, everybody can. I mean, everybody's going to. Like, I don't have a doubt in my mind. I went from zero awareness to infinite awareness, and if that can happen for me, it's gonna happen for everybody. But again, it's about staying present. So, like, how can I, in this moment, create a 5D reality? So 3D is ego-centered, self-centered thoughts. 5D is spirit-centered, service-centered thoughts. And 4D is the awareness and the time-space continuum that we have these different levels of thought system. So I can have the Great Awakening happen right now. I can be in a 5D thought by being service centered. Like, we're being of service to each other right now and the collective. We are in the 5D in this moment. And staying present is such a huge part of that. That's where heaven is. Heaven is in the present moment. So I don't want to say like there's many years to go, because I hope that I get to experience a daily experience of that shift from awareness. But I do know that things are happening rapidly because I was woken up, and I wouldn't have been if things weren't happening right now.
So it sounds like it's both a personal experience plus a collective experience.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yes, because we are all one. So your experience is the collective experience. There's this branch of philosophy, it's called solipsism. And basically, in solipsism, it says that there's one mind creating everything. Who is the mind? Am I the mind? Am I creating you right now with my own thought systems? Is God the mind? Are you the mind? Are you creating me and all these words that are coming out of my mouth? So when I think about the world that way, it helps me to understand the oneness of all things. We're all collectively creating each other, or probably more likely God is creating all of this that's happening, or the universe is just wanting to experience itself. So it's kind of blasted out into all these different parts.
What does it look like once we've won the game and I guess you called it a grid, right? Isn't controlling us and we're not disillusioned any longer.
So winning the game is just, again, that daily reprieve. Like, today, how did I do today? So like every day at the end of my day, I do a little inventory of myself. What did I do well today? What can I improve upon tomorrow? What am I grateful for that happened today? When did I see God? When did I stay present? That's my little inventory that I do on a daily basis. So more than focusing on, like what happens next. I'm just in a state right now where I'm continually being present. That's where my journey is calling me right now.
I love that. So that's something we can take control of. We can each focus on being present every day. And that's really what the job is. That's all we need to do.
Yeah, it's very simple and also very challenging because as humans, we love to overcomplicate things. And that doesn't mean like don't dream about your future or don't do this, but like I feel like even a version of myself, thoughts of the future create anxiety and thoughts of the past create shame and guilt. And so if I'm trapped in either of those places, I'm not here in the present moment. I know that the present moment is heaven. I know it. I know it. I know it with every fiber of my being. That doesn't mean that like I don't go back into the past to heal it, because I absolutely do. That's a big part of who I am, and part of my purpose of me being me is to continually heal those traumas that I experienced and to make living amends for the traumas that I caused to other people. And then, my future, I'm constantly in a state of manifesting and visualizing and dreaming big dreams for myself. So, yeah, there's so many different layers to the experience. But if you're somebody who experiences a lower vibrational experience from going into those other places, the past or the future, then staying present is definitely the most optimal tool to use. And if you don't know how to stay present, there's so many tricks. I mean, like you can just Google it, you'll find a million tricks. But one of them that I recently discovered that I'm really having a fun time utilizing is I find 5 things that I can see with my eyes, 4 things that I can hear, 3 things that I can feel, 2 things that I can smell, 1 thing that I can taste. If I can do that, I can bring myself right back to the present moment. Or like I'll just stop in the middle of the sidewalk and do 10 jumping jacks. I'm like, damn girl, you're all out there in your thoughts. Like just come back. Like, where are you? Jump up and down, sprint down the block, like do whatever you have to do, but like come back to the center.
I love those tips. There's things that I've never thought about. So I think that's a really easy way to bring your presence back. You said that this life is kind of like a dream state. When you had your experience, did it feel more real or like you woke up?
Woke up. It was crazy. At one point in the experience, I woke up and I couldn't remember any of my earth life. I could only like grab 3 seconds, just like when you wake up from a sleeping dream and you're like, damn, that dream was so weird. Wait, what was it? Like you immediately forget. You know that it was weird, but you don't remember what it was. The only thing that I could remember out of 35 years of life at that point in time was that my parents had committed suicide. I woke up in heaven and I said, damn, did my parents kill themselves? That was so weird. So when I think about it in hindsight, I spend hours of my day worrying about what I look like, what I sound like, what size my jeans are, what like just these crazy obsessive things. I didn't remember any of that shit when I woke up in heaven. I didn't remember about the guy who wouldn't go out with me or the friendship that dissolved, that I spent hours, years of my life ruminating over. None of that came with me. So again, like the staying present is so important. Um, Even like the major markers in my life, like getting married, falling in love, witnessing my sister be born, none of those things came with me when I woke up from heaven. I will say that, in heaven, it definitely feels more like reality than here does. But there's a lot of heaven moments here too.
Now that you're back, are you able to maintain that connection to the other side to access, like if you have questions or you want to converse with one of your guides, can you do that?
Absolutely. And everybody can. You don't have to die to have a connection to your spirit guide. Everybody has access to their guides. So, what I do is I do a lot of character development around my team. I have a little posse of 12 spirit guides, and each guide assists me with something else. So, your spirit guides are your customer service agents. Okay. They only work if you call them. You have to call on them in order to get help. So, sometimes when you call customer service, you're on hold for a really long time, or there's a language barrier, or you get the wrong department and they can't help you. For me, it's been the same experience with connecting with my spirit team. So I have to exercise a lot of patience and tolerance and discernment to know if I'm on the right path. Some of the tools that I use to connect to my spirit guides, I practice the art of bibliomancy. That's where you open up a book to a random page and it speaks directly to you. I love using that tool. You can do the same thing with tarot or an oracle deck, like picking out a random card and just trusting and knowing that you're picking out the exact card that's meant for you. I also do automatic writing. So I'll just clear my head and I'll allow my pen to just start to move across the page. And I'll channel in an angel or a guide, somebody that has a message for me or for the collective itself. I love being able to utilize tools on how to strengthen my spiritual connection because that's what it is. It's a strengthening. It's like going to the spiritual gym. The same way when I go to the physical gym, I'm not going to walk in and pick up a 500-pound weight because I can't handle that. So every day I lift little weights and I do the same thing with spiritual practices. Every day, if I do a little something towards my spiritual strength, I'm going to have that conscious connection that I truly desire. So definitely keep up with the spiritual fitness. Do little things each day to strengthen that awareness.
I love that you talk about the physical things that you can do because I feel like a lot of the times there's a lot of people that they say, oh, well, you just ask and trust or feel your intuition. And that's a lot more difficult for a newbie. Like, say, I don't have any psychic abilities or clairs or anything like that myself. So it's harder for me to just say, oh, what is my intuition saying? And when you can actually open a book and then read something and it's physical, you can uh, I guess that's a little easier for someone like me. So thank you for pointing out those physical tips.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love the dismissive because like it's kind of spiritually dismissive. It's like, well, how do you overcome? And it's like, you just do, girl. You just do. It's like that's not helpful. I need some steps. I need some tools on how to do this. So yeah, I'm all for the tangible. I if I can, just for a minute, I'd love to share about my technique for healing trauma. I think that it's really useful. A lot of people that are drawn to my story are people who have experienced trauma themselves. And if I can overcome trauma, anybody can. So, again, I use the same tools that I use to develop my light, to develop my shadow. So, all of these pieces of myself that I would love to disown because they're very undesirable, they need to be developed and they need to be loved and healed. So, like I said, I was a ruthless abuser. So there's a version of me who is a very maniacal, malicious, manipulative liar. She's just like a very cruel person. So I did some character development around her, right? Like she's very skinny. She is like very tall and kind of arched over. She's like a long pointy nose. She's like this creepy, like long fingered sort of. She's like, she looks very undesirable, right? She looks scary. She's an abuser. She's ruthless. So every morning I have to cover her in pink light so that she doesn't take over my life in the day. Now, the abuser part of me, she's not like very active in my life anymore because I live my life led by spiritual principles. But my addiction, for instance, he's a man, he's a gay man. His name's Richard. He wears a white linen suit and he lives inside of a glass house inside my mind. And he was my main personality profile for a very large portion of my life. And so he's a little bit trickier to keep inside of like this glass house. So, I've given him this home. He comes with me on every part of my journey. And again, like the forgiveness, I have to practice forgiveness for him because he was keeping me safe. After my parents died, there's no way that I could have survived those emotions without medicating myself with drugs. There's just no way. I know it. So, he kept me safe, but then at some point it turned away from safety and it came into something totally different and it just became this ruling force. I do the same thing with inner child work and inner teenager work. I have to constantly be in communication with these parts of me. And it's all about imagination and intuition. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be a psychic. You don't have to be able to see them with your eyes. You can feel these pieces of you. So, like, for instance, my inner child, She presents herself very dirty. She's wearing like these lavender leggings. They have holes in them. Her hair is all tangled, and she's like always kind of with her knees to her chest. So I make a conscious decision every day to spend time with her. I carry her metaphorically on my hip as I walk down the street, or I'll listen to a song that I loved when I was a kid. I loved Madonna. So we listen to Madonna a lot. She comes to the gym with me because she loves when I exercise my physical body and I listen to the fun music and I kind of visualize her dancing around the gym with me as I'm on the elliptical. And she loves that stuff. So I stay in communication with the different parts of me because they're all lovable parts. They're all asking for love. They might have done some crazy stuff in my life with me because my spirit wasn't in the driver's seat. There's been many times in my life where I let the shadows take the driver's seat of the vehicle of my life. Today, spirit and the universe source, that's the in the driver's seat of my earth experience. My higher self is driving. And all these other parts of me are just like chilling in the car with me. Some of them I try to keep in the trunk. I'm like, come on, guys, we're not doing this. But at the end of the day, they all are these pieces of me, and I am love, and so is everybody else. So if you're somebody who's dealing with trauma and you're looking for guidance, I offer mentorship. I'm a spiritual coach, I'm a transformation coach. I also belong to a ton of spiritual communities that focus on this stuff. So even if you don't want to work directly with me, please feel free to reach out so that I can shepherd you to a free community where maybe you can get some healing in your life.
And how can my viewers find you if they did want to reach out?
Yeah, so I'm on all social media. My handle on everything is Buddha Betty. It's a play on words. So feel free to reach out, and I'm looking forward to connecting with anybody that feels called to connect.
If you had one message, Betty, that you wanted to leave with the audience from our conversation today, what would it be?
My message would be that there is no such thing as condemnation. Okay. If a homeless meth head prostitute strung out on heroin who was a liar, manipulator, thief, racist, rapist, atheist, maniacal, ruthless human being can make it to heaven, you're going to make it to heaven too. So don't let your past hold any bondage over your present because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to experience good, bad, indifferent, transmute, transcend, connect, and love.
So comforting and so inspiring. Your entire life is just an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing it. I appreciate you so much.
So grateful for this space. Thank you for what you're doing for the collective, creating conscious space for experiencers. It's really doing exactly what it's supposed to.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.